Hi guys, how you doing? Hope you're well. So in today's midweek mystery, we are exploring the very bizarre, mysterious, creepy, all-in-one case of Elisa Lam. Now this is a very popular case with conspiracy theorists, and I feel some kind of way about that because at the end of the day, this was a young woman that ended up being killed some way, somehow, and we still don't know how exactly that happened. And I just saw there's so many theories online regarding this particular case that we can sometimes make her case into somewhat of like a novelty, and actually it is a true person. This was a real woman, and who has a real family, and yeah, we should kind of respect that as well. But I am going to be discussing her case in depth, and I will go into some of the theories that have been surrounded, and all I will let you know is that at this point we still don't know exactly how she came to meet her death. Just bear that in mind. But if you yourself have any particular theories that you want to discuss below, don't forget to leave those below for me and we can have a little discussion. I love to discuss with you guys some of your own thoughts on these cases. I also don't mean to cause offense to anybody that is impacted by this particular case, and everything I do say is literally just based on facts I have found on the internet. So let us get into this. Who was Elisa Lam? She was a 21-year-old Canadian student. She was the daughter of immigrants who arrived in Canada from Hong Kong, and they opened a restaurant near Vancouver in Canada. Elisa actually was a student at the University of British Columbia. Elisa liked to travel alone, and she travelled alone on Amtrak and intercity buses. Now, January 26th, she actually arrived in Los Angeles, and after 2 days she checked into the Cecil Hotel. And I'm going to go into the Cecil Hotel quite briefly in a moment, but it's quite a significant part to why conspiracy theorists are jumping on this particular case. Now, the Cecil Hotel is near downtown Skid Row in LA. She initially shared a room in the hotel, but her roommates complained of her very odd behaviour, and after 2 days the hotel gave her her own separate room. Now, before I continue on with Elisa Lam and her background, I want to kind of just touch on the background of the Cecil Hotel, just so you kind of know the setting in which this hotel is based and the reasons as to why people are very suspicious of her case in terms of the location of her case. Now, the Cecil Hotel was actually built in 1927, and it was one of LA's most notorious, famous hotels, and it was notorious and famous for the events that took place in that hotel, so not for a good reason. It was home to Richard Ramirez and Johann Unterweger. I don't know if I've said their names correctly, I apologize. Ramirez resided in the hotel between 1984 and 1985. And during his time at the hotel, he actually killed 13 women, and he would dump his bloodied shirts and everything, his clothing, in the back bins of the hotel. The Austrian murderer Unterweger was also believed to be a copycat of Ramirez, and he also, during his time at the hotel, went on a killing spree, and he murdered a whole lot of prostitutes whilst he was staying at the hotel. So as you can see, the hotel has been resident to serial killers. In 1962, Pauline Otten actually jumped from her room on the 9th floor of the hotel, and as she actually landed on top of George Giannini, and she actually killed him with her fall. There was also an unsolved murder in the hotel as well of Goldie Osgood, who was known as the Pigeon Woman, and I believe she was raped and murdered in her room and strangled in her room, and again, no one knows who committed that murder. It's also believed that Elizabeth Short, who is famously known as the Black Dahlia, was also drinking in the hotel shortly before she too was murdered in 1947. And the hotel has also been depicted in popular culture, and it recently made an appearance or reference in the American Horror Story. So as you can see, the Cecil Hotel is quite a controversial hotel, and because of this case already was like signals for people and their conspiracy theories. Now, going back to Elisa Lam, she had actually been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She was on a number of prescribed medication for this as well, so that's quite important to note as we look at the footage of her. Although her family had reported that she had no suicidal tendencies, but at the same time her family were very cautious as to reveal the extent of her mental illness as well. Elisa was actually quite a creative person. She created a blog called Esther Fields, I believe, on Blogspot, and I think it may still be up. She regularly posted about fashion, but she also posted a lot about her mental health and mental illness. Then after 2 years of posting on her blog, Esther Fields, she actually created a new blog called Nouvelle Nouveau, and this is where she posted mainly fashion content, but she also did touch on her mental health and mental illness. And I believe you can find those blogs still online. Now, let's get into her disappearance. Now, January 31st was the last day that Elisa had been seen. She spent 5 days sightseeing in LA and was then due to check out of her hotel and then move on to Santa Cruz. Now, Elisa would regularly call her parents. She would call them daily, but on this particular day, her parents did not receive their regular call and they became very worried about the whereabouts of Elisa. So they called the LAPD and a search had begun for Elisa. The police used tracker dogs and searched the hotel and the roof, but nothing was found. Now, 2 weeks had passed of searching and there was still no sign of Elisa. Around this time, hotel guests at the Cecil Hotel were starting to complain of their water in their room being murky and tasting terrible. And there was also reports of very low pressure of the water. A hotel maintenance worker called Santiago Lopez was tasked with trying to work out what the problem was. So he took the elevator to the 15th floor where he climbed a set of stairs to the roof and then climbed a ladder to reach the 10-foot tall water tank. He noticed that the hatch of the water tank was open. Now, when he opened up the water tank lid, he saw the corpse of Elisa Lam and she was laying face up in the water. Now, later on it was revealed that Lam was also found naked in this water tank. Now, officially her death was ruled as an accidental drowning by the LA County coroner, but there's still no clear answer as to how she got there, why she was there, or who possibly may have caused her death. Aside from the location of Lam's death, there was footage that the police had released in order for people to come forward if they had recognized Lam, so they could help with the, with her last movements. And they released this CCTV footage of Lam, and I think that this, alongside the hotel, are reasons why conspiracy theorists have really gripped onto this particular case. And you'll see in this footage, which I'm going to play you, which is I think a 4-minute video that the police released on February 13th, 2013. It shows very odd, strange behavior that Lam was demonstrating just before she went missing. This video creeps me out a bit, I'm not gonna lie. I don't really get creeped out, but this one is a bit creepy. In the clip, you can see that she gets into the lift and she studies the buttons on the lift, and then she cowers in a corner in the lift before leaping forwards towards the doors. And she kind of like flips her head around frantically in both directions as if someone was chasing after her. She walks out into the hallway and gesticulates with her hands as if she's petting a large invisible dog or paddling through murky water. It's like she's seeing something that nobody else can see, which is so creepy. So as you can see in that footage, a lot of questions can be asked. It's just very odd behavior. And yeah, a lot of theories have been put forward. So I thought I would go into some of the theories with you, and you can like just discuss some of these theories, and then you can kind of let me know which ones you're more inclined to believe. But at the same time, let's just remember this was a real person. She has a real family, and obviously it's devastating for them. And we still really want to find out the truth as to how her ending became to be. So the first theory that I want to touch on is that people have argued that she was murdered by a hotel employee. Now there's no clear evidence of this, but as I've mentioned before, the Cecil Hotel has had a past, and there has been an unsolved murder in the Cecil Hotel before, so it could possibly be linked, but again, we don't know. Maybe someone in the hotel had been monitoring her, watching her. They knew she was traveling alone, and they took that opportunity to do something with her, and yeah, it ended up in her death. But again, there's no evidence for this. The second theory that has been put forward is that her death was inspired by the movie Dark Water. Now, if you've seen that movie, it is a horror movie, and it's based on an old haunted building. In this particular movie, residents complained of a foul tasting dark water coming from their taps, and the strangest thing is that in both circumstances the water was dark and tasting horrible because of a decomposing body of a girl in the water tank on the roof of the building. Even creepier was that the film's main characters were called Dahlia, who was the mother, and her daughter Cecilia, which is obviously really strange because obviously that's kind of a link to the Black Dahlia who was last seen at the hotel, and the hotel is called Cecil Hotel. In the movie as well, there are also lift malfunctions like we kind of saw with the footage of Elisa Lam, and young Cecilia can be seen talking to thin air in the lift as well because her imaginary friend is there. So there's so many similarities in this case, which you're just like, okay, this is really creepy. So some people argue that maybe it could have been a copycat, so somebody was trying to emulate the movie with Elisa's death. Very out there, but creepy. The third theory has been put forward as that she was assassinated over a government project. Now apparently Elisa had posted online about a Pentagon-funded invisibility cloak project just before she had died, and this is actually true. So the US and South Korea have been working on this project for some time, and many have speculated that the government or maybe a private company may have assassinated her because she basically revealed too much about this project. Maybe her behavior in the lift wasn't so strange after all. Maybe she was seeing things that we couldn't see because of this invisibility cloak. Another theory, the fourth theory that has been put forward, is that she was a tuberculosis drug test subject. Strangely enough, whilst Lam was staying at the Cecil Hotel, there was actually a breakout of TB in the area of Skid Row and in most of the downtown area that surrounded the hotel. Now the strange part to this was that the TB test that was being used in the area at the time was the enzyme linked immunosorbent assay. And even stranger is that the short name for this was actually the Lam Elisa. How crazy is that, guys? Also, isoniazid is the most commonly used antibiotic for TB patients, and its side effects include confusion and abnormal behavior. Now, Lam's toxicology report didn't actually find any strange drug in her system, but many conspiracy theorists, as I've mentioned before, think that the drug test results were altered because there were so many delays in the reports being released. I'm a bit uncomfortable saying this particular theory, but this is kind of linked to the TB theory. But some theorists out there, and very few theorists out there, believe that Elisa Lam probably never existed and her case was made up to distract from an internal government sponsored TB outbreak and testing. Their reasoning behind this is that they're saying that the government kind of made up Elisa Lam's case so that if you did type in Lam Elisa into search engines, the first thing that will come up, and most of the information that will come up, is about Elisa Lam and her case, as opposed to the Lam Elisa drug test. Very, again, out there, but I don't know. What do you think about that one? Number 5, her death was a sacrifice to the dark energy of the Cecil Hotel. Now, there is something obviously wrong with that hotel. Like, there's something that either draws in killers or something in the hotel is making people want to kill, and it's just, there's just something there. And people believe that the hotel may have had some form of energy, dark energy, that attracted all of this stuff to go on, and possibly that could have been why she ended up dying. Number 6, some people believe that maybe the hotel was haunted and the ghosts were tormenting her. Again, I'm not necessarily inclined to believe that one, but if you are, that's completely fine, because they say, you know, what was she looking at in the lift? There was obviously something there that we couldn't see, and only she could see, or she could feel the presence of something. So it must have been a ghost or spirit or something, but I'm not that inclined. Some people have gone even as far as saying that she was possessed, possibly. Number 7, has been argued that Elisa possibly killed herself. Most people believe that Elisa drowned accidentally, whether it was accidental or suicidal. They think that it was her own doing. Again, that one is more plausible, but the argument, again, counteracting that would be, how would she have had access to the tank? Because it was such a big tank, like you would have to have a ladder to climb up the tank, and apparently there was no ladder by the water tank. During that time, it would have been very difficult for her to do this by herself, basically. Number 8 is that her death has been linked to a Korean elevator game in which the ritual of pressing buttons on an elevator in a certain order would enable the person to reach another dimension. Now, the most plausible explanation that I could see out there was that Lam had bipolar disorder, and according to her autopsy, had only taken her prescribed stimulant medications, but neither of her stabilizers. Now, this may have led to her developing a manic episode, which could cause some bipolar sufferers to experience hallucinations or psychosis. Now, if Lam was experiencing a manic episode, then that would explain why she may possibly have thought that someone was following her, and this may have caused her to hide in the water tank for safety. But then again, it doesn't explain why she was found naked in the water tank. There are so many questions surrounding that, but that could be the most plausible in terms of her mental state at the time of her death, and it could also explain the very odd behavior in the lift as well. Now, just to kind of look at her access to the water tank, it's very difficult for her to have access to that. The water tank was located on the roof of the Cecil Hotel. As I mentioned before, the hotel maintenance staff had to go onto the roof of the hotel, and only the hotel staff had keys to unlock the doors to the roof. So again, could this possibly be linked to a hotel staff member? She could have used the fire escape to get onto the roof, because obviously everyone needs to have that access. But if you did access the fire escape, then that would have triggered an alarm, and no one in the hotel had mentioned or said that they heard an alarm going off at all. Now, the lid for the water tank was 10 feet above ground, so that's 3 meters up, and it does require a ladder, as I've mentioned many times, to reach, but there were none around the night that Lam ended up inside the water tank. And also, the lid to the water tank wasn't hinged, so it wasn't like a simple lifting up of the lid, and so she could have maybe opened it, but then how would she have closed it on herself? Because it's not simply just pulling it down again. So there are so many questions surrounding this particular theory of her, you know, going into the water tank herself. But at the same time, it's possibly the more plausible one, just based on the fact that her mental state at the time of her death was very questionable. So guys, that's it for this particular case. Let me know what you think. There are very odd theories surrounding this one, and yeah, it's just a strange case to me. I really don't know what to believe in this particular case. I'm more probably leaning towards her having a psychosis moment or a manic episode, but maybe that's just because of my psychological background, but that's more where I'm leaning to. But in terms of her actual death, I just don't really know what makes sense as to, you know, she may have possibly been trying to hide from something that she believed was there, but again, how did she get into that position and stay there and like close herself into the tank. That's what I don't get. So it's just a very confusing case, I think, for everybody. Yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. Have you come across this case? Have you come across any other theories? There are so many theories out there. I just didn't even know which ones to put in because some of them are just really out there. Let me know your thoughts down below, and if you found this particular case to be interesting, don't forget to give me a thumbs up and comment down below as well, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for future cases as well. Thanks guys, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye.